us. And at the end of this session, we shall give you a few announcements regarding where we are at as FOWEK, Kenyan chapter. And also as our speaker today has a conversation with us, as she shares what she has, I'm very sure questions will be popping in your head. You will have curiosity. You will have things that you need clarified. I invite you to just park that somewhere. You can write it on our chat. I will take note of that, and we'll have a moment of Q&A. So don't be pressed with matters that you can ask here. Don't take that question home. Share with us. It will be answered. And those that might not be answered fully in this session, then we'll give you guidelines on how that can be done. Are we together there? If we are still together, please give me a thumbs up so that I know I'm not talking to myself. Beautiful. Thank you so much. I appreciate all of you, and I love those beautiful thumbs up. So beautiful lady entrepreneurs, today we have a powerhouse. I don't feel adequate to introduce her, but I'll give it a shot. She's a self-professed emotional intelligence fanatic. Let me repeat, emotional intelligence fanatic, on a mission to transform the leadership landscape, changing hearts and minds, one leader at a time. As a 6-second certified master trainer, EQ practitioner and coach, she is dedicated to helping individuals and organizations to thrive in today's complex and rapidly evolving landscape by nurturing leadership excellence. Our key competencies include coaching, team and leadership retreats and meetings, capacity building and facilitation skills, leadership development, emotional intelligence, organization well-being, change management and customer experience, and strategic planning. She is the founder and lead changemaker at PTS Africa, a boutique Pan-African people-driven consultancy firm headquartered in Kenya that provides solutions underpinned by a bedrock of emotional intelligence methodologies fueled by the ideology that emotions drive people and people drive performance. She also works on a consultancy basis with a number of organizations providing training and coaching services across Africa, Middle East, and the US. In her spare time, she works with teens and young people at church and in the community, mentoring them to develop greater self-efficacy. And she is a ferocious leader, a budding saxophonist. And I hope she can play that for us today. A novice hiker who loves to spend time with her family in nature. Ladies, help me welcome. Find the best emoji you can find and welcome our speaker for today, Mucha Mlingo. The floor is yours, Mucha.
Thank you so much. I can say that there will be no saxophone played today. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me here this morning. I am always delighted to be in spaces where I can talk about emotional intelligence. This is something that I am very passionate about, hence why I call myself an emotional intelligence fanatic. Good morning, ladies. Thank you so much for having me in this space. I want to, really look forward to our conversation. So before we dive in to talk about the topic of the day, I want to acknowledge something that we all have in common. Every single one of us in this room has probably had a moment where we've lain awake at night thinking about our business, a difficult decision, a client who hasn't paid, cash flow issues, issue with a team member, wondering whether as a leader you are making the right call. Running a business isn't just a financial journey, it's an emotional one. That's the truth. We often like to think of ourselves as rational beings, making rational decisions as we run our business. But the truth is that a key part of the work that you do as a founder, as a leader, is emotional. Raise your hand. Just go um, to the emojis and raise your hand if you've ever made a business decision that when you look back, you realize was driven more by emotion than strategy. Maybe you reacted too quickly. Maybe you delayed a decision that you already knew you needed to make. Maybe you said yes when you should have said no. Or maybe, just maybe, you let one difficult conversation become 6 months of frustration. Or maybe it's all of the above, right? I can see the hands raised. Well, you're in very good company because the truth of the matter is emotions drive behavior. And so this is why it's so important for us to make friends with our emotions so we can understand what is influencing how we show up and the decisions we make. As you've heard, my name is Mucha Mlingo. I am the Managing Director and Lead Changemaker at PTS Africa, the emotional intelligence company. Over the past 16 years, I've had the privilege of working with leaders and organizations across the continent and beyond, helping them to develop emotional intelligence. And one thing has become incredibly clear to me. The businesses that thrive aren't always led by the smartest people, book smarts, or the most experienced people, or even the people with the most resources. Emotional intelligence has become or has been noted as one of the biggest contributors to business success. So here's where we're going to begin this morning. Today isn't about becoming more emotional, it's about becoming more intentional. We'll begin by exploring what emotional intelligence is, and how it is a competitive advantage for entrepreneurs today. We will reflect on how emotional intelligence influences the decisions we make and the way we lead our teams, and ultimately the growth of our business. Then I will share some practical tools that you can start using immediately, whether you're navigating difficult conversations, making high pressure decisions, or simply trying to lead with greater confidence and clarity. My goal today isn't to give you more theory, it's to give you practical ideas that you can put into action the moment you leave this session. But before we dive into any of that, I'd like us to start with ourselves, because every business has a leader behind it, and every leader brings something into the room. So let's begin with a check-in. I'd like you to reflect on how you are arriving today. All right, and we can use the chat to comment. So please go to the chat and share, how are you arriving today? Running her business is rewarding, but it comes with pressure. Every entrepreneur comes into the room carrying something. It could be excitement, it could be uncertainty, it could be a big opportunity, a difficult decision, or simply an extremely long to-do list. Take a moment to check in with yourself, not your business, yourself. How are you arriving today? There's some options on the slide, but don't be limited by those options. Perhaps these options don't describe how you are doing. Maybe you're not feeling energized and ready, or okay, but carrying a lot. Maybe you're feeling a mix of emotions and you can't quite figure out what they are. Perhaps you're feeling drained and stretched, or hopeful and optimistic. What is it that you're feeling? Let's go to the chat and have a look at how we are arriving today. All right, so I'm seeing a mix of emotions, hopeful and optimistic, curiosity. I love that emotion. Curiosity is one of the most powerful emotions. And, unfortunately, it's one of the ones that we kind of, kill off as we grow. We're born very curious, but it's one of those that we kind of kill off as we grow. All right, so I'm okay, but carrying a lot, crossroads and uncertain, a mix of emotions, curious but ready, curious, energized, beautiful day ahead, not sure, a bit hopeful, stressed and drained, mixed emotions and uncertainty, drained but hopeful and optimistic, energized but very anxious, open mind. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you for sharing. If you haven't, just go to the chat and share how you are arriving today. As I read through the options, as I read through your reflections, I'm reminded that we can feel such a variety of emotions. And sometimes the emotions we feel can be on opposite ends of the spectrum. There's no right or wrong. And this isn't about being positive or negative. It's about noticing where you are, because awareness is always the first step towards better decisions. Whether you chose energized, hopeful, drained, curious, carrying a lot, or a mix of emotions, every response reminds us of a very important truth. We don't leave our emotions at the door when we come to work. As entrepreneurs, we often tell ourselves that business is about strategy, it's about finance, it's about marketing and operations. And all of those things matter. But behind every strategy is a person. Behind every negotiation is a person. Behind every difficult conversation, every hiring decision, every customer interaction, every risk that you take is a person. And people don't make decisions in an emotional vacuum. How we're feeling influences what we notice, what we prioritize. It influences how we communicate, how we respond to pressure, and ultimately, it influences the quality of the decisions that we make. And that's why emotional intelligence isn't a nice to have leadership skill. It's a critical business skill. It's one of the greatest competitive advantages as an entrepreneur, because it shapes every interaction and every decision that follows. So before we talk about the impact of it, before we talk about how to strengthen it, let's make sure we're talking about the same thing. Let's talk about what emotional intelligence actually is. Now, there are many definitions that exist of emotional intelligence. And if you go online, you will find several. I like to keep it simple. Emotional intelligence is the ability to recognize, understand, and manage your own emotions, while also recognizing and responding effectively to the emotions of others. Notice that definition doesn't say that you should suppress your emotions. Neither does it say you should always be calm. And it certainly doesn't say that emotions are a weakness. The goal isn't to become less emotional. The goal is to become more aware. Because whether we acknowledge them or not, our emotions are constantly influencing how we think, what we notice, the risk we take, the conversations we avoid, the opportunities we pursue, and the decisions we make. Think about it this way. Your IQ helps you solve problems. Your EQ helps you solve them without creating new ones. Your IQ might help you to build a successful business. Your EQ determines whether people want to keep doing business with you. It determines whether your team trusts you, whether your customers feel heard, whether you stay calm when pressure rises, and whether you can make decisions that are driven by purpose rather than panic. I often describe emotional intelligence as the connection between the head and the heart. The head gives us logic, analysis, and strategy. The heart gives us empathy, values, and human connection. Great entrepreneurs don't choose one over the other. They know how to use both. When these two are connected, we make wiser decisions, we build stronger relationships, and we create businesses that are not just profitable, but sustainable. So if emotional intelligence is about connecting our thinking with our emotions, the next question becomes, what does that look like in practice? So let's explore 5 ways emotional intelligence gives entrepreneurs a real competitive advantage. This is what the research tells us. Emotional intelligence is not just a nice to have, it actually drives business results. When we talk about emotional intelligence, it can sometimes sound like something soft or personal, but in business, it has very practical consequences. As I've said, it affects the decisions we make, especially when the pressure is high. It influences how we lead people, how we communicate, how we handle conflict, how we respond when things don't go according to plan, which is the reality for most of us as entrepreneurs, and how we sustain ourselves through the ups and downs of running a business. So, emotional intelligence helps us to make better decisions by slowing us down enough to separate the facts from the emotions so that we can respond rather than react. And this is critical. Yes, it's true. In business, you may need to make quick decisions, but emotional intelligence helps us to use both head and heart. It's the intersection of both that helps us to make those better decisions, not the absence of either. Emotional intelligence drives our leadership capability, making us more effective leaders. Because the way we manage ourselves shapes how other people experience us. Our teams don't just listen to what we say, they watch how we behave. And this is a critical point. The research shows that leaders who are high in emotional intelligence are more effective. They drive those bottom line results that we are all aspiring to as business owners. Emotional intelligence helps us to have healthier relationships. And here's the thing, business is built on relationships with our customers, our suppliers, our partners, our employees, and our stakeholders. Emotional intelligence helps us to build trust, to communicate more effectively, and navigate tension without damaging those relationships. Emotional intelligence, building this critical muscle, helps us to develop or drive sustainable growth. The truth is, growth brings pressure, more clients, more people, more decisions, more complexity. As the business grows, the leader has to grow too. Building your capability for leadership. The organizations that will thrive, especially in today's business environment, with the complexities of navigating business and leading the teams that we lead today. That requires emotional intelligence. And finally, greater resilience. Entrepreneurship will test you. There will be uncertainty, setbacks, moments when things simply don't go as planned. Emotional intelligence helps us to stay grounded, adapt, and keep moving without losing ourselves in the process. And that brings me to the line at the bottom of the slide. Every business decision is made by a human before it's made by a business. Your strategy may live in a document. Your numbers may live on a spreadsheet, but the person still making the decision is human. And that's why your emotional edge can become your business edge. So we've seen that emotional intelligence influences better decisions, stronger leadership, healthier relationships, sustainable growth, and greater resilience. The question is, how do we develop it? Because emotional intelligence is a skill. And so what that means is we can develop it. I like to think about our emotional intelligence competencies as muscles that we develop. In the same way that you go to the gym and you work on the different muscle groups, we can strengthen our EQ capability. And it grows through consistent practice, not occasional inspiration. The good news is that you don't need to make dramatic changes to become a more emotionally intelligent leader. In fact, some of the biggest shifts come from few small habits. I've been rereading Atomic Habits by James Clear. I think it's definitely one of my favorite books in the moment. And I really love the idea of making small shifts. James Clear, if you've not read the book, talks about the 1% improvement every day. And he challenges us to make a 1% improvement every day. Because if you improve by 1% every day, at the end of the year, you would have made a big shift. Oftentimes, the reason why we don't change is because we try and make big changes, big jumps, and they ultimately become unsustainable. So I want to share with you 3 practical habits that I've found that make a significant difference, whether you're leading a team, serving customers, or simply trying to make better decisions under pressure. And these are simple, practical things that you can start doing today. I love to be practical and I love to make things simple. Look at these 3 ways that you can begin strengthening your emotional edge. So, all right. We've talked about emotional intelligence, what it is and why it matters. And so I want to share with you these 3 simple habits that I said can strengthen your emotional edge. And the idea is this is the response to what can I do with this morning as I begin my day. I'm not asking you to do anything that is overly complicated. I just ask you to be intentional. And these tips can really support you to do that. One of the greatest skills that you can develop as a leader is the habit of introspection. And, it sounds so simple, but it is so important. It is so very important. Having this or developing this habit of introspection. It's important to create regular moments to check in with yourself. Most entrepreneurs spend time reviewing their finances, reviewing their sales figures, reviewing customer feedback. But how many of us actually spend time reviewing ourselves, checking in with ourselves? And so I encourage that you build the habit of self-reflection, starting first on a daily basis, checking in with yourself. So just a few minutes every day, I think I say 5 to 10 minutes on the slide, doing a check-in with yourself. And then you layer that on at the end of the week, doing a check-in with yourself, and you layer that on with a monthly leadership check-in. And I encourage you to actually diarize it. The same way you diarize your meeting with your accountant to do a check on the numbers, the same way you diarize a meeting with maybe your leadership team to check in on how you're doing as an organization. Diarize your leadership check-in. So 5 to 10 minutes every day, then a recap at the end of the week, and then a monthly check-in. That's maybe about 30 minutes just to check in on how you are doing, because you are the one leading the business. And the idea of this check-in is to really pay attention to what's going on beneath the surface. We like to describe individuals like an iceberg. And the idea is there is the tip of the iceberg that is visible. And that really represents the things that we see about you, the things that we hear about you. But you will know that an iceberg has a lot more beneath the surface than what is above the surface. And so beneath the surface is all the things that we don't see. And those are the drivers of behavior. And so on your daily check-in, you're asking, how am I feeling today? What's influencing my mood? What affected how I led today? On your weekly check-in, you're checking in on how the week has been, what your emotional temperature has been throughout the course of the week, how you've shown up to your team, to your customers, to your stakeholders throughout the course of the week. And at the end of the month, you're reflecting on the whole month. And you're really doing the work of digging deeper to understand yourself. Go to the reactions and again, give me a hands up if this is something that you regularly do. And go to the chat if this is something you regularly do and tell me how this has impacted, how this has supported your leadership journey. So 2 instructions. Number 1, if this is a practice that you do, go to the reactions, give me a hands up, give me a thumbs up so I can see those who are doing regular leadership check-ins. And then if you do leadership check-ins, go to the chat and just tell me how these have benefited you in your leadership as an entrepreneur. Anyone in the chat? I'm looking to see, oops, yes. All right, I see some comments coming. Let's have a look. Thank you very much. So Patricia says, self-reality checks help me to create a daily task list, though I still find myself, I didn't get this last part, myself mod way, Patricia. Anyone else? How has it helped you to check in with yourself? Lillian says, help me to be more self-aware. Fantastic, thank you. Marcia says, I do the self-introspection and will add on the leadership check-in. Great stuff, Marcia. Anyone else? Please keep sharing. I'll keep coming to the chat. So tip number 1 is to develop the habit of introspection. And we introspect on a daily basis. So what I do at the end of my day is I reflect on what 3 emotions I have, what am I feeling, all right? And I use those emotions to deep dive into how the day has been. So I just start with asking myself, what am I feeling? What are the 3 emotions that would describe what I'm feeling most today? And I say 3 because our emotions often come in multiples. And so perhaps it's feeling stretched, I'm feeling excited, and I'm feeling anxious, which is very possible. And then I deep dive to understand what it is that has, triggered those emotions. So the self check-in at the end of the day can take whatever form you would like. But the idea is to just take a moment to look beneath the surface. And the 3 questions that are really useful, as I've already shared, the 3 questions that are really useful is, how am I feeling today? What is influencing my mood? And how has this affected how I led? And when we develop the habit of introspection, what happens is we then feed forward that insight. Because what happens when you're paying attention from a reflective perspective is you actually begin to pay more attention in the moment. You begin to notice the patterns of behavior. And that's what we're trying to achieve. And then at the end of the week, you reflect on your reflections for the week so that you can identify patterns that exist. And then at the end of the month, you do a longer leadership self-check-in where you're looking at how you've shown up as a leader in that particular month. And you're looking at how you've interacted with the team. You're looking at how you have, contributed to building the relationships. You're looking at how you have shown up in terms of your emotional temperature. So you're identifying or you're looking at key indicators, leadership indicators that are not just the kind of business results. Let me just do a quick check on the chat and then we'll go to tip number 2, which is a build on tip number 1. I see there's a question, so I'll come to the question afterwards. Vicky, hey Vicky, great to have you here. Self-check helps me understand what days need me more regulated, which emotion I need to cultivate, and sometimes to check on the cause of a difficult, unpleasant emotion so I can attend to it. Thank you, Vicky. The truth of the matter is our emotions show up in how we behave. And so if we're not paying attention to what is beneath the surface, our emotions are still showing up. You're not noticing it doesn't change the fact that your emotions show up. Phyllis says, I have a daily task list, but now I'm not really sure I do the introspection, just what needs to get done. I don't touch on my emotions, moods, and how it's affecting how I'm leading. And the truth is, as I just said, our emotions do impact how we lead. We may not realize it, we may not recognize it, but emotions drive behavior. It is a biological fact. Juliet says, I do the check-in, but I don't have the daily discipline. That is the challenge for me to up my game. Thank you very much, ladies, for sharing. Right, I'm looking at the time. Let's go to tip number 2. So tip number 2 is a build on for tip number 1. Notice what you're feeling, dig deeper to understand why, and take action. Self-awareness isn't just for self-awareness' sake. It's so that we can take action. Awareness creates choice. One of my favorite quotes says, between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space lies, the opportunity for us to make a different choice, right? Between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space lies the opportunity for us. And so the idea is to take that space. And the truth is, as leaders, we're often moving fast. But our emotions are valuable sources of information, very valuable. But they're not always good decision makers. Feeling frustrated doesn't automatically mean someone is wrong. Feeling afraid doesn't always mean the opportunity is risky. Feeling excited doesn't always mean it's the right decision. And so the idea is to notice the emotion, recognize that emotions are invaluable data, and then dig a little deeper. Why am I feeling this? What is the most helpful response? In that short pause, you create choice. And that choice is what separates reacting from leadership that is impactful, leadership that is responsive. And so take that pause. And sometimes that pause is just a few seconds. But that pause is critical. That pause is what helps us to make decisions that are sustainable. And I think this is where the challenge often lies, because we often feel under pressure to make decisions very quickly. And so we don't pause. I think earlier I asked you to raise your hand if you'd ever, kind of made a emotional decision, a decision that was driven by your emotions. And I think pretty much everyone raised their hand. Our emotions are data, but our emotions are not directives. Let me say that again. Our emotions are data, but our emotions are not directives. The idea is to sift through the data to make a decision about the best way forward. And this is why emotional intelligence is such a game-changing skill, because it helps us to do that. It helps us to be more responsive rather than reactive. Whew, time is running away from me. I must get to tip number 3. Tip number 3, determine your boundaries and protect your energy. This is one that most of us as entrepreneurs struggle with: boundaries. You know, when you're passionate about your business, it's easy to say yes to everything, to every client, to every opportunity, to every request. But the truth is, every time you say yes to something, you're also saying no to something else. And that something else could be your health, your family, your focus, or your well-being. Emotionally intelligent leaders understand that boundaries are not barriers. They are commitments to what matters most. Protecting your energy isn't selfish. It's one of the most responsible things you can do, because your business needs a leader who can think clearly, lead consistently, and show up at their best. As a leader, it is critical that you have clarity on your boundaries. Raise your hand if setting boundaries comes easy. Or maybe let me make it the other way around. Raise your hands if it doesn't come easy, because I think that's probably the reality for most of us. Raise your hands if setting boundaries, or give me a thumbs up if setting boundaries does not come easy, right? I see the hands raised. This is a challenge for us. And so the idea here is, when you spend that moment of daily self-reflection, weekly self-reflection, and the monthly leadership check-in, a key part of that is asking yourself, what are those boundaries that I need to guard more fiercely? What are those boundaries that I need to guard more fiercely? And that is a strategic question to ask yourself. When you think about that time management quadrant that we've all learned about in order to manage our time more effectively, successful business owners spend time in that quadrant of important, not urgent. And there is the work that we do to build our EQ. Because it may not seem necessary in the moment, but I can assure you that it has an impact in the long run. None of these habits are complicated, but practiced consistently, they change the way you make decisions. They change the way you lead people. And over time, they change the way you grow your business, because your business cannot outgrow the emotional capacity of the person leading it. Can I say that again? Your business will rarely outgrow the emotional capacity of the person leadership. So as we wind up, I know there's some questions that are already in the chat. I will come to them. I just have two things I want to share. One thing I wanted to share is we recently launched our mental health workbook. And I bring it in because I think it is a really useful tool on that last point I made around creating boundaries. And so the mental health workbook has 12 mental health challenges. One of the biggest myths in leadership is that resilience simply means pushing through, but it doesn't. Resilient leaders don't ignore what's happening beneath the surface. They create space to notice it. And that's why we created the Mental Health Reset Workbook. It's not just another book to read. It's a practical guide designed to help you slow down, reflect, process what's happening internally, and reconnect with what matters most. The workbook contains guided reflections, practical exercises, and simple prompts to help you build the very habits we've spoken about today. Because sometimes the greatest investment you can make in your business isn't another marketing strategy or another networking event. It's taking care of the person who makes every decision, and that's you. So if you would like to learn more, you can scan the QR code, go to our website. The details are on the slide. It's www.pts.co.ke/reset. And you can learn a bit more about this workbook. And I want to leave you with a reflection before we go to the Q&A, because I really want you to think about everything that we've talked about today. What is one habit you will commit to this week, that you will commit to from today, that will strengthen not only your well-being, but how you lead your business? So we talked about developing the habit of introspection, We talked about pausing to look deeper on what's going on beneath the surface. We talked about making sure that you safeguard your boundaries. Which of these three are you going to pick up? And I say which of these three because oftentimes we come into spaces like these, we love what we hear, and we go away saying we'll do everything, and we end up doing nothing. And so I want you to just choose one. Choose one thing that you are going to commit to doing consistently. And then because you will have access to these slides, because you can come back to this video, you can always come back once you feel you've been working on the one and add another. But commit to one. Feel free to share in the chat the one thing that you are going to do differently. So I want to go to our Q&A. I want to appreciate you all for being here today and for listening so keenly. Please take a moment. I know that we want to go to our Q&A, but I always find it's important to make a note and actually commit to something. So write it down. What's the one habit you will commit to? You can write it in the chat, or you can write it on your own notepad. Maybe it's setting aside 5 minutes for introspection daily, then doing the weekly check-in, and then setting a diary, a calendar, setting it in your calendar to do it monthly. It might be pausing before responding to dig a little deeper, to understand what it is that's going on beneath the surface. It might be protecting a boundary that you know you've been neglecting. Or perhaps it's making the decision to invest more intentionally in your well-being. Whatever it is, make it a SMART goal. Make it something you can begin today. And as you think about your commitment, remember this: small daily choices create lasting leadership change. Leadership isn't shaped by one decision. It's shaped by the habits that we practice every day. And when you strengthen the leader, you strengthen the business. So thank you for allowing me to spend this time with you today. And I hope this conversation has reminded you of the greatest investment you can make in your business, which is in yourself. Juliet, I don't know if I'm handing back to you to do the Q&A or if I should just go to the chat, but I'll be guided by you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mucha. Kindly just go straight to the Q&A. I see 2 questions.
Fantastic.
So kindly respond to those. And ladies, if you have a question, we can take about 3 more. Kindly share on the chat as Mucha answers the ones that are already there. I hope you can see the Mucha.
I see a question from Florence. You said there were 2.
The first one was from Florence, and then there was actually it was just that one from Florence.
From Florence?
Yes, okay, for now.
I see the question from Florence. Ladies, if you have any other questions, please do ask so that we can. Okay, I see Ruth has raised a hand. I don't know if you have a question, Ruth. So let me answer Florence's question, and then we will come to yours as well, Ruth. So Florence's question: there is a fine line between authentic influence and emotional manipulation. How can business leaders safeguard their decision-making processes when dealing with stakeholders who leverage emotion solely for self-serving outcomes? All right, great question. And it's great because it gets to the heart of emotionally intelligent leadership. Emotional intelligence is not about allowing emotions to drive decisions, right? It's about ensuring that our emotions inform decisions without controlling them. So authentic influence invites perspective. Emotional manipulation seeks control, right? And so the difference often lies in the intent and transparency. And so as leaders, we safeguard ourselves by recognizing that our emotions are data, not directives. So when a stakeholder appeals primarily to fear, guilt, urgency, or personal loyalty, the first instinct is, to react. But emotional intelligence calls us to pause and ask ourselves what the actual issue is, and to reflect on what evidence actually supports, their position. and whose interests are being served. And so the idea is to build our muscle, build our capacity to balance empathy with objectivity. So we acknowledge the emotion in the room, but we also test assumptions. We seek multiple perspectives. We refer back to any agreed principles, any organizational values or strategic priorities that can help us in the decision making. So one practical safeguard or anxiety without allowing those emotions to determine the outcome. And wherever possible, emotional intelligence is avoiding, making decisions in emotionally heightened moments. So where possible, create space to reflect, because that helps us to think through whether the emotion is the one, whether the emotion is highlighting a legitimate concern, or if the emotion is being used, to manipulate and to influence the decision unfairly. So ultimately, the goal is not to become less empathetic, right? The goal is to become more discerning. Great leaders leverage both head and heart and set those boundaries, right, that we talked about, where stakeholders are moving into manipulation. So I hope that answers the question, right? The idea is that we must be able to be empathic, tune into the emotions, but empathy with boundaries and empathy with accountability. So I hope that answers the question. If you have a follow-up question, you're welcome to share. Ruth, you had your hand up. Would you like to unmute yourself and share your question?
Yes. Sorry, I'm not able to write because
no worries, no problem.
Yeah. Yes, no problem. So now, as we grow up in business, there are those challenges that we face as women. That you mentioned about emotional manipulation. We are manipulated as business people, as women, and sometimes we are not able to handle our emotions, especially most of us who live with disability, because when you walk into an office and you are here as a businesswoman and you want to maybe to win that big tender and you are manipulated because of your condition, you are a woman because of your condition. What is the best way that you handle, especially for those who are not accepted themselves with the kind of special needs that they have? Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth. The line, I don't know if it's on my end or yours, was not so clear. So I want to start by making sure I've understood the question. So you mentioned, because you kept breaking, that often as women, we are manipulated in business.
Because I'm on the road, sorry.
Yeah, no worries. We're often manipulated in business. You mentioned that, especially for those who may have, I couldn't catch that last part. So
okay, the last part
about
was
a specific category.
Especially with special needs.
Especially those with special needs, right?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, sure.
And so you talked about not being able to handle our emotions. And your question was, how to navigate that? Have I got that correct?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Navigation. Thanks for sharing. All right. Thank you for sharing. I think that the truth is our effectiveness as leaders begins with the work that we do on ourselves. And I cannot overemphasize that. We cannot navigate, manage what we are not aware of. And that's why I often start with this idea of encouraging us to develop the habit of introspection. We cannot manage what we are not aware of. The brain loves autopilot. The brain works on the basis of doing things the way that you always have, because that conserves energy. The challenge with that is that on autopilot, we are not paying attention. And so I would say that before we can think about how to manage others and how to manage those who maybe push our buttons, who encroach on our boundaries, we need to think about how we manage ourselves, how we navigate the emotions that we have, right? So that we can more effectively impact others. So I think number one, it's know your emotional signals. Notice what happens when you feel pressured, when you feel dismissed, when you feel intimidated, when you feel rushed. Your emotions should be an early warning system. And instead of judging that emotion, ask yourself, what is this emotion telling me? Our emotions are data. So what is that data? Number two, create a pause between emotion and action. 9 times out of 10, we don't have to make the decision in the moment, right? We can use phrases like, I need some time to consider this. Let me review this information before I respond, or let me come back to you, or let me take a moment. At the end of the day, we can take a moment. And so take that moment. When we pause, when we take a breath, we bring ourselves back into balance. When our buttons are pushed, our nervous system goes into fight or flight or freeze mode. And so pausing helps us to regulate. And then we are better able to respond rather than react. And then build safeguards, right? Build safeguards, build strategies that you use once you have noticed your emotional temperature rising. And sometimes that means walking away. Now, I want to highlight something really important here. Emotional intelligence doesn't mean being soft. It doesn't mean that people can walk all over you. Pausing for a moment doesn't mean that you don't address the issue. It just impacts how you address the issue. And so if, for example, someone is taking liberties, right? Someone is taking advantage of you, someone is not giving you the respect that is due to you, emotional intelligence doesn't mean that you allow that to happen. It just means you take a breath, you self-regulate so that you can respond in a way that is appropriate. I have found that there is a lot bigger impact when I calmly put someone in their place than when I do it with emotions heightened. I found that it causes them to stop and take a breath and consider me a little more seriously. When with a very calm voice, I indicate what has happened, why it is not appropriate, and the impact that it's having, and where necessary, the steps I am going to take. When I do that with a calm voice, assertively, it has more impact than when I kind of lose control. So I hope that helps, right? It's really important that we do not overcorrect by believing that being a strong businesswoman requires you to suppress emotion. The goal is not, I mustn't feel this. The goal is, I notice what I am feeling, I understand what may be triggering it, and I will choose my response. And if my response is to put my foot down, I will put my foot down. I hope that's clear. Not sure if there's any other questions. I see all your reflections. Thank you very much for sharing your reflections on what you'll be doing next. Barbara, I hope we have a minute. Barbara, yes. Juliet,
yes,
I know our time is up. Barbara had her hand up.
Let's take one quick question.
Thank you very much.
Just a moment, Barbara.
Okay.
Let's take one quick question. Barbara's would be the last. Okay. And then on that note, ladies, I would request that you give us an extra 10 minutes to have that question answered and for us to wrap up. So we finish at 9:10, kindly. Go ahead, Barbara.
Okay.
Thank you very much, ladies.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. My name is Barbara Kabuchu. I'm from Uganda. I do not know how I stumbled onto this page, and I am glad I did. I think it was from LinkedIn. Surprisingly, and I think it's because of recently I'm doing a doctorate on the perspectives of women entrepreneurs with regards to access to finance and business success. And I have found so far, and I've interviewed so many women business leaders, owners actually. You cannot believe what you're saying, Mucha. Is this what you're called? Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
Mucha, yes.
The link between emotional intelligence and should I say business success is real. Now, for me, I am seeing it in the tangible, very tangible space of the women I have interviewed, the women I have asked. They are running businesses, mainly small businesses, SMEs, but you will find that a lot of what they think, how they feel. This is my studies about the feelings, about the state of mind as they run their businesses. I have found so much linkage between their state of mind and the success, the business success. And so many will tell you, no, I feel it's weird. This grant that they've brought up, the government is giving money. My mind just tells me don't go for it. Or something like, no, I think that the men are better at this. Or this morning I woke up not feeling. So a lot of, and it's how we grew up. Maybe it's the culture. But also I would like to add that again, from my findings, I see that for women businesses or women business owners to really change and have this, what you're talking about, the emotional intelligence, you can actually work on it, drive it, auto suggestion.
Yes,
there's lots of
Thanks,
ways how
Barbara.
you can actually intentionally work at changing how you think. If you every time you think that you're thinking negatively or you're dealing so much with how you're feeling and putting a lot of emphasis on, I feel like this, or I'm not good enough in this and this. And so there are ways, and
Thanks,
maybe,
Barbara.
I don't know if this group has gone through those ways, but we would need a lot of our business entrepreneurs to go through those steps to change how they think, to be able to compete at a global
Thanks,
scale.
Barbara.
Thank you very much.
100%.
Maybe we'll talk another time, but
Thanks,
I'm
Barbara.
learning a lot from these women businesses. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, Barbara, for those insights. Indeed, I think you've said it well. The truth of the matter is that our sustained business success is going to be impacted by the work we do on ourselves as leaders. And I think that is such a critical parting shot for us all. The work we do on ourselves will be critical to driving our business success. Thank you so much, Juliet, for the time that I've been afforded to be in this space and share these brief reflections. And I think on the last slide, I have been asked to share my contact information. Connect with me on LinkedIn. I love talking about emotional intelligence. And so you'll always find insights and tips there. And yeah, you can shoot me an email if you have additional questions that you would like to ask. Juliet, thank you. Let me hand back over to you for the wrap up.
Thank you, Mucha. Ladies, please let's give Mucha flowers with our emojis. I don't know about you, but this session, for me, I needed it. And I believe we all needed it. I hope you found a good take home. Mucha, those insights are so timely, they're necessary. Some of them are not easy to face up to, but I'm glad you shared that with us. So bless you, and we appreciate you. Please, ladies, if you have any more questions, more clarification that are needed, kindly connect with Mucha. At this moment, I would, as we wrap up, I want to appreciate again the presence of our Madam President, Vicky Karuga. Thank you, Vicky, for being in the house. We see you, we appreciate you. I would also want to appreciate the L&D team in the house. Thanks, Rahab. Thanks, Mills. Thanks, Winnie. Thanks, Faith. And I would like to hand over to Winnie to give the final remarks and wrap up the session for today. Thank you for your patience, for being present, and please be on the lookout for our next items and sessions for Filtered, Business Unfiltered. Over to you, Winnie.
Thank you so much, Juliet, for taking us through. Thank you so much, Mucha, for that Business Unfiltered and insightful presentation on entrepreneurs' emotional age. We've covered a lot today, and in such a short time, just 1 hour of learning of how our emotions can put us on edge. But we'll hold on to one thing, that our emotions edge isn't a soft skill. So we need to take it and learn that it is also an advantage for us. And well, in this case, being in business, no one can copy that skill. So before you just get about your day, just take the time to follow through with the task assigned by Mucha by naming one of the emotional habit that's costing you, and one you want to build instead of that. That said, but not yet done, we as FOWEK are here for you so that you don't do it alone. We want to work with you as you build your emotions while you run your businesses. And we'd like to invite you to join us for our next upcoming event. We have a B2B. We have registrations, a B2B that will happen on the 19th of August, 2026, starting at 5:30 p.m. Now join us so that we continue connecting, we continue building together as women entrepreneurs across all the COMESA region, while we unlock new opportunities for trade, partnerships, and business growth. And then our next event will be a talk, a webinar on how to make your project bankable. So join us to make yourself investor ready on the 19th of
But the
August.
guys who are there in the 70s, wanasema,
Judy Maina, kindly mute.
So what people are saying the same thing.
Judy Maina, thank you. As we, as women, meet to trade and grow, join us for this investor readiness webinar that will be happening also on the 19th of August, 2026, from starting 3 p.m. to 4 p.m., just 1 hour of your time as a business entrepreneur. And then our next event is a program that has been is being organized by Business Incubation for Africa Youth and Women Entrepreneurs, commonly known as BIAWE program, facilitated by Kirdi. So registrations are ongoing, and we are asking that you as a business woman entrepreneur partner register for this wonderful program that is going to help you. Our next event also registrations on women in business for agri program happening this year again. Just for you to learn how to be export ready. This program is designed to equip women entrepreneurs with knowledge and skills needed to grow and expand into the export market. All the links are going to be shared in the chat for you to be able to join, register and join and explore and take advantage of all these programs, wonderful programs organized for you as a woman entrepreneur. With that said and done, not yet done, contact us. These are our contacts. You can call our secretariat through the number on 0798 510 851. You can visit us on one of our social platforms. We are on LinkedIn. You can also get us through our website and also our email. So welcome all join FOWEK and also register for those programs that have been prepared for you. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your questions of today's Business Unfiltered topic. Thank you for your openness. And it's been a privilege as FOWEK and also Committee Learning and Development And we ask that we see you in the next Hangout. So welcome. Have a lovely day. It's a beautiful Wednesday. Until the next one. Thank you. Over, back to you.
Yes, ladies, we are done for the day. Have a lovely midweek and the rest of the week. Please take note of the links shared in the chat. Connect accordingly, and we will see you next time. God bless you all.